So what are the Dodgers saying? What are you hearing out of that end of things right now?
They're not going to be commenting on this one, I think. I mean, Ken Rosenthal and I had a piece up today just kind of outlining all the unanswered questions, and part of it is because Ohtani did not speak after the game. Mizuhara has not been available, has not responded to requests for comment in the days subsequently to giving the two differing accounts to ESPN. Nez Bolello, Ohtani's agent, has declined comment. Dodgers officials, Stan Kasten and Andrew Friedman, declined comment. Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, kind of has to go out there and talk because that's his job, is he has to talk to the media twice a day. But even he is kind of unable to get into the meat of it. As of right now, the Dodgers are kind of just going to seem like they're going to try and roll through it and play with Ohtani as their DH. And, I suspect that he will not be addressing this in any meaningful fashion. He's a very private person to begin with. Very reticent to reveal details of his personal life. And it's hard to imagine now is the time when he suddenly opts for transparency. But, I was very surprised that, Ipe Mizuhara gave that initial account to ESPN. So, anything can happen.
Yeah.
So it's not a story I expected to be covering this week. I'll tell you that much.
Well, nobody did. That's why I'm asking about the Dodgers. Did they had no inkling, obviously. They must be stunned. They must be absolutely gobsmacked as to what's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things, Ken Rosenthal and I were writing about today is this the sort of thing that the Dodgers should have known? Is it something that in their due diligence, should they have been aware that, at the very least, Mizuhara was tied up with a Southern California legal bookmaker? Hard to know. I mean, I can sort of understand it both ways. That, like, how would you get that versus it's the sort of thing that people talk about. It's a shocking sort of story for sure. And my understanding is the Dodgers were caught off guard by it.
I'm sure they were. I guess what would you vet the anyone in his circle? I mean, of course you're not doing that while you're battling the Blue Jays and everything else as you're trying to keep everybody, under wraps, quiet, because any false move would blow the opportunity to get the greatest player that baseball has to offer internationally, nationally, for anybody that would cut through the noise in our sports world. Why would you think anything was up with this guy that was untoward? Yeah. Although, unless you plugged into the gambling community, because that was the piece part of the piece in ESPN that shocked me, is that the gambler in question, the bookie in question, didn't disabuse any of his clients of the notion that Ohtani was a client. So people had to be talking around these parts here.
Right. And that's the counter to your initial point is like, yes, obviously how do you find this out? It's like, well, this guy was letting people know, it appears, that, he was taking bets from someone, either Ohtani or someone representing Ohtani. That seems to be the way that, that they presented it in the reporting from ESPN. And so, I can see it both ways. You can also argue, like, if you just hear, he's involved with a guy who's been gambling too much. It's like, well, okay, it's Shohei Ohtani. He's the modern day Babe Ruth. Like, that's a risk we can take. I suspect you were not imagining it to be a scandal of this magnitude. And it's still, it's still so much that needs to unfold. We just don't know what happened. And it's really hard to get our arms around until you have a narrative that is sort of established as what actually happened here.
And anybody that's sent money from their bank, website, which is most anybody who has money in one of the major banks of the United States, which is maybe most everyone in the sound of our voices right now, Andy, knows that if you send money, you're going to get like a code to your phone. You got to plug it in.
Right.
And, I've never straight up wired the amount of money that Ohtani was wiring. I can only imagine the number of bank representatives that would have to be involved with a wire of this size. And by the way, if it was the same amount every time, that's 9 times he sent this amount to the same guy, the same individual. Wouldn't that set off an alarm bell somewhere?
Yeah, I was going to say, your career seems like it's going better than mine. So you probably have more experience theoretically sending that sum of money. But
no.
So we're on the same page.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's another, part of this story that sort of needs to be vetted out, right? Is because ESPN, based on their reporting and bank documents they had, Ohtani's name going to, Matthew Bauer, the, alleged bookmaker. And so how did that happen? How did the theft occur is something that is going to need, if the theft occurred, how did it occur? How did you get past that sort of, thing that we all know of just trying to transfer, $500 from in between bank accounts, right? It's not the easiest thing in the world. So it's another thing that sort of needs to be vetted out, and, hopefully we'll have more clarity on it. But yes, you raise a great point that it's something that does not immediately pass the smell test, I guess.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.